What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild episode 114, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name is Meowth, and as usual, I'm joined by my two good friends and co-host Roffle and Corbett. Guys, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I had a bit of a brief mini vacation. I'm well rested and excited to see some cards that I haven't taken a close look at yet. So happy to do that with the two of you, and I can be corrected when I inevitably misread something again.
Yeah, I did enjoy that we already got something immediately wrong when we did last week's episode, talking about the Risen stuff. But that's just part of the card review, is reading and misunderstanding half the cards. So I'm looking forward to doing that all over again with you guys here today.
It wouldn't be a card review if we didn't misunderstand or misread something, right? So we're just continuing the tradition. I guess before we dive into things, we should just correct that from last week. So a lot of the cards that say kind of use up one of your courses to rise a minion, things like that. When that minion dies, it will not add back to your corpse counter. So something like that 2-drop, the 2/3 that summoned to 1/2 taunt doesn't technically go infinite, like we thought it might. So some cards do get a little bit worse. To be fair, this wasn't really mentioned in any of the blog posts from what I read, so I don't know how we were supposed to know that, but I'm just not going to take the blame on that one.
Yeah, and it does make sense in hindsight, just because like you shouldn't have corpses go
Infinite.
feed into themselves.
Yeah.
So like from a gameplay perspective, as well as from a flavor perspective, it kind of makes sense because like they're already dead, so they don't create new corpses, as well as the fact that they've already died, so you shouldn't generate new corpses off of them from a gameplay perspective as well. So it makes sense in hindsight, but we were wrong. Yeah. It happens.
It won't be the last time either. So we're just going to hop into some of the cards. Basically, what we're going to be doing today, another really, really long card review episode, but we're going to be talking about all of the Death Knight cards. They've all been revealed, both from the core set, the Path of Arthas, which is like the little adventure thing that you're going to get, basically, and get 3 decks, as well as all the cards technically from the brand new expansion. So we got all of those, and we also got all of the neutrals, so it's going to be a lot to get through. We're going to dive right on in. We're going to do the same thing we did last week, where we're going to be going kind of rune by rune. And so we're going to start with the Frost rune. And let's start with the second legendary here, which is Thessarian. I believe I'm saying that right. I hope I am, at least. 4 mana, 1 Frost rune for a 3/3 undead legendary creature with Reborn, Battle Cry, and Death Rattle. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy. So 4 mana, 3/3. You play it deals 2 to a random enemy. That includes potentially enemy heroes, for better or for worse. And then you're going to get 2 Death Rattle triggers off of it. So basically 4 mana, 3/3, eventually deal 6. How you guys feeling about
it? It's making me feel like I want to go Frost in that even unholy Death Knight. Not an outstanding card like at first glance, but like it's got a lot of numbers on it that like keep coming, and it seems pretty sticky. So generally something with this many numbers on it at 4 mana, probably pretty good. Generates 2 corpses because of the Reborn, right? I'm assuming I'm getting that right. It doesn't say Risen anywhere. And just kind of like helps you fight for the board. Really poor stats, but the fact that it comes back, it's like it's like a Shredder Juggler kind of thing. Seems pretty good.
Yeah, the comparison that I've heard is, I don't know, kind of this like cold case in Mage. Obviously, there's no armor, but like the idea of 2 skeletons is probably having like a similar-ish effect on board with that deal 2 damage to a random enemy. So yeah, just like really solid, like standalone, good generic board control card. So whether that gets into things like even DK, we'll have to wait and see. But if there was some sort of like Reno deck, I could definitely see this like slotting in. It's just like, I don't know, it's just like good, right? It's like solid board contesting, but it's also like kind of pressure in a little bit of a way.
it? Yeah, we'll dive into a lot of the other cards. I don't know if it'll make the cut, because there's a lot of little cute synergies as well. I don't know if you just want like a standalone okay card, but if you do, whether it's Reno or in this like even DK that we're hyping up, could potentially see it. All right, next up we have 4 mana, 1 Frost rune for a 3/6 undead repulsive gargantuan. Great name. 4 mana, 3/6. Enemy characters can't be healed. Drop this the turn before they play Reno, and that's just going to be a 6 mana 4/6. is this effect? I know it's a very cute effect. I know people love denying the opponents from doing things. Do we think this is good enough to actually be playable? Like, is it a widespread of enough of an effect?
It feels hard to say yes to that, just because like outside of Reno, what other healing effect really is there? And outside of Reno Priest and maybe a little bit of Reno Druid, what Reno Drex are really seeing play right now? Like, yeah, there's some Reno Lock, always floating around, as well as Reno Mage. Like, it's going to depend on the prominence of Reno decks almost entirely, as well as potentially the popularity of like how maybe a Blood Death Knight ends up doing, because there's a lot of healing in blood, as we'll see, a lot of life total manipulation and lifesteal type things, as well as just like the overall quality of cards that you see in Death Knight, I think. Because if again, especially if you're restricting yourself to only even cards, you're restricted in terms of the options available to you. Same applies to Reno decks. It could be like an aggressive Reno like Death Knight deck that wants to counter other Reno decks. Like, maybe you consider putting it in, but I think it, in general, like most tech cards, too situational and too like poor in what else it does to be played.
Yeah, I just don't think this one's very good. Just to put it pretty simply, I just think it's not a very good card.
Yeah, there's, I think, very little healing outside of Reno in the format, and so I'm kind of in the same boat. All right, next up we've got Rhymefang Sword. 3 mana, 2 Frost Runes for a 2/3 weapon. After your hero attacks, reduce the cost of a spell in your hand by 1. Found your Frost Apprentice, Corb. It's just on a weapon this time.
Yeah, wait, let me find the card real quick. There it is. Yeah, it's not quite Sorcerer Apprentice, is it? It's kind of like a Gavel in Shaman. It's interesting though, like built-in mana cheating like this is it's kind of like a very, very toned down like palm reading almost. So I don't know, it's interesting. Can definitely help set up like very big swing combo turns. The fact that you can always like bank mana into future mana cheating is always nice. But the 2/3 like stat line on the weapon is actually just like kind of pretty bad as well. So I think if there's like a very specific deck, it could find a home, like a very specific hyper turbo combo frost thing. But as it's like something that you just throw around in random double frost decks, I don't really see that working out too well.
Yeah, it's just like kind of a lot of mana to just get your mana back over 3 turns, right? Like, mana cheat good, but like the quantity and like scalability of that mana cheat is also important to consider. And this is not going to be the thing that like breaks something wide open. A lot of these Death Knight cards are aimed at standard, and I think that this is an example of that, where it's like it's mana cheating, but it's very fair.
Yeah, and I think it's a little too fair to be good enough in Wild. Kind of in that same boat. Next up we have Rhyme Sculptor, 5 mana, 3/3 undead, 1 Frost Rune. Battlecry, summon 2 2/1 Rhyme Elementals. With Death Rattle, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. So I'm assuming that this is 3 corpses, because it doesn't say that you're using up corpses for this. So 5 mana for a, what is that? Quick math. 5 mana, 7/5. 3 corpses, 2 of them are going to be skeletons that deal 2 damage. I know this isn't even, but how are we feeling about this card?
It's a corpse generator for Frost, is what it seems to be, or seems to be aimed at. A lot of the Frost cards don't necessarily need corpses that I've seen quite as much as like Blood and Unholy. So it seems a little bit misplaced. It's like a splashable card. Maybe you consider, again, if you have low minion quality in a Reno deck, but I don't think you're excited about playing this card.
Yeah, Frost is definitely the class. So what do we call these? Subclass? The rune that has like the biggest corpse problem. So having like multiple bodies on this is pretty good. It kind of reminds me a little bit of I mean, we just talked about it, like the Saurian, the legendary, where it's doing a lot. It's like pretty efficient, but it's also like a an undertuned version of that, with the payoff of getting an extra corpse. So nothing too flashy. Don't really see it making too much of a splash in Wild.
All right. Our next card here, Frost Strike. 2 mana Frost spell, 2 Frost runes. Deal 3 damage to a minion. So we're in that same cycle of 2 mana, deal 3. If you kill that, it doesn't have to be honorably killed or anything. As long as you kill it, you discover a Frost rune card. So not a Frost spell, but a Frost rune card. So it could be a 1, 2, or 3 Frost rune spell, minion, weapon, anything like that. 2 mana, deal 3 at its base, with the upside of discovering a Frost rune. Downside, 2 Frost runes to include in your deck.
Yeah, I think with Frost, a lot of the cards want you to go in for 2 to begin with anyway. So if you're building around Frost cards, which really this card wants you to anyway, because like the Frost cards seem to synergize with one another, as do the other runes. Like you're, in for a single Frost rune, in for all of them, from what I can see. It doesn't quite roll off the tongue like the old saying does. But, a lot of you want to go pretty heavy in Frost runes. They synergize with one another. And early on, you're going to have a very narrow card pool. So this is certainly one to keep an eye on, kind of maybe see it kind of like a, what is it, the Tooth of Nefarian and Rogue, where, it can't go face, but like you have the benefit of a little bit more controlled environment that you're discovering from. A lot of the Frost Rune cards are pretty good, and if you have a high probability of generating something that you need, like a Horn of Winter, or something along those lines that can give you some more mana. I feel like this is just a pretty solid card that's worth keeping an eye on, especially early on.
Yeah, I mean, we know how these cards go. Like 2 mana, deal 3, very slight upside. Pretty much pretty efficient. The nice part is that the cards in Frost, like they can be a bit situational. For example, like Remorseless Winter is the Consecration draw a card. Having something like that is really a huge benefit for this, just because you can find situations where cards are like very, very efficient when they work. And if they don't work, you just take something else. So there's a few payoffs like that. So yeah, card's fine.
All right, let's hop over to Remorseless Winter then. 4 mana, 1 Frost rune for a Frost spell that says deal 2 damage to all enemies. Draw a card. Poral Consecration getting power crept here. Had to get that power crept note in somewhere. But 4 mana Consecration, but you draw a card as well. Solid card. I don't know if you guys have any strong feelings about it.
Consecration is a bad card. This is a better version of it. I don't know. It depends on how bad you really want to draw a card, I guess. But nobody's happy about playing Consecration in their deck. I'm sorry. They haven't been for a very long time. The only reason you even consider it is because you do have access to now a 2 mana quality. So yeah, you think about it. But Consecration is trash. This card's probably playable just because it does cycle at least, or at least borderline playable. I'm not putting it in that even deck to begin with for sure, though.
Yeah, this one isn't exciting me either. I have heard though that Death Knight being better Paladin is very flavorful and on brand, so not a surprise on that one.
It's true. As a former Ret Paladin myself, I can confirm that to be true.
Yeah, unlucky Paladin players. All right, next up we have Harbinger of Winter. 2 mana for a 2/2 undead, 2 Frost runes. Death Rattle, draw a Frost spell. So basically 2 mana, 2/2 Death Rattle, draw a spell. It feels like if you're going double Frost Rune, you're building around a lot of these powerful spells that are in the class. It seems like a decent card. It being a Death Rattle does kind of suck compared to a Battlecry, just because slower always a little bit worse, but it does seem kind of like a slam dunk in the 2 Frost Rune decks that want it.
I don't know. I misread it as a Battlecry, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll consider playing this. But then now that you said it's a Death Rattle, which it definitely is, I'm a little bit skeptical. Unless you play this on 2, Frost Strike it on 3, you get 2 Frost spells. It does also specify, I believe, this is not Frost Rune spell, this is Frost spell, so this could hit the runeless things like Icy Touch as well. So it's looking at the Frost spell school, which I know there's unfortunately a bit of a overlap and confusion there, but it does change things slightly, maybe. But I don't know. Death Rattle draw cards feel so bad because like you just don't have to kill him. It doesn't play the card like it's no mad scientist.
Yeah, I think this is just not good. Yeah, like if it was a 2/3, even then, I mean, if there's a battle cry, might not still be interested. So yeah, I just don't think this is good enough.
Damn, not even interested if it was a battle cry.
I think you'd consider it a little bit more strongly, but the the as a Death Rattle, like I don't know, we've seen this card before, or at least iterations of it, and they're always pretty disappointing.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm overvaluing the targeted card draw, which is a very real possibility. All right, so let's move into the Path of Arthas cards here. All the frost spells that we mentioned, or frost cards that we mentioned, have been in the core set. So we're moving into Path of Arthas. We've got Lady Death Whisperer, 4 mana, 4/3 undead, for a 3 frost runed legendary card. Death Rattle. Copy all frost spells in your hand. Pretty potent, powerful effect, but it is on a Death Rattle. Again, Death Rattle versus Battlecry, big deal. But 4 mana, 4/3 pseudo draw. I don't know. Like, at what point are you happy with the value you're getting off of this?
Well, I mean, one like neat thing it does like double up the discounting from the weapon. So you can like discount a spell twice, and then when that Death Rattle goes off, you get a copy of the discounted version. So maybe there is like some janky like OTK stuff you can do when you start. Well, I mean, I don't know where all the damage is coming from is the problem. I haven't actually tried to build this deck. I'm kind of just envisioning this imaginary deck that somehow deals 30 damage by playing Innovates and, deal 4s to the face. But I don't know, like, being able to double up the Innovate effects is a lot of mana cheating. So that seems reasonable, but do I think it's realistic this is going to find a home and be the secret piece in any sort of like OTK deck? No, probably not. Like 4/4/3 Death Rattle's very slow. So tough to make it work, I'd say.
Yeah, and on top of that, you do require 3 frost runes, so that takes like out any flash ability, so you're like heavily invested in it. It's possible that the one saving grace here is that, again, if you're building a 3 frost rune deck, which I don't know that you necessarily want to do, you're pretty limited on options early on, right? Because you probably do want to squeeze in a lot of class cards. They tend to synergize with one another. And, like, how do we have 15 playable frost rune only cards right now that you can just, like, run 2 of each of those and call it a deck? I know you can add neutrals, but like the way that frost runes tend to be so spell heavy, or seem to be so spell heavy right now, you probably want a lot of class cards in there. And so, like, again, the saving grace might just be that what else are you going to put in your deck? And it does double some things up. I don't know, like, is this a card that you're just happy to slam on curve? Because it needs to come down on curve, right? Otherwise it's way too late in the game. So have you drawn enough cards to get reduced? Because where's the card draw in the class or in the archetype right now? Especially since we talked about the Harbinger of Winter being a little disappointing. Like, where is the card draw? And you kind of need to be drawing cards before you slam this. And so yeah, it's kind of a disappointing 3 rune legendary, I'd say. But maybe down the line that changes.
All right. In addition to all the spell stuff, Frost also has a bunch of weapon synergies that we'll talk about here, starting with Might of Menethil. I'm sure I butchered that name. Got it? Nice. Easy. First try. 4 mana, 4/2, 2 frost runes for a weapon. Battle Cry. Spend up to 3 corpses. Freeze that many enemy minions. So I think if there's only like 2 enemy minions, you will not spend 3 corpses. I believe is my understanding of how that works. Basically, 4 mana, 4/2 weapon with a kind of like a flurry effect, I believe is the name of that upgradable mage spell, which seems like pretty strong tempo actually for this weapon. How are we feeling about it kind of just generally? It is 2 frost runes, so it's not like super easy to splash.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem with it, because as we talked about earlier, Frost has a bit of a difficulty in generating those corpses early on. So this is like, if this were one Frost Rune card, you're like, yeah, I'm just shoving this into every 2 Unholy deck that I build, and it's beautiful. But like the requirement, and this is where I think that the like the deck building requirement for Death Knight becomes interesting, is like, okay, well, I need to do something a little bit different here. I need to figure out a way that I can go heavily into Frost, probably include some Unholy as a splash effect, and like go away from where a lot of the cards seem to be pushing me in Frost, which is very spell heavy, and focus on some, early game minions. So I think it's a good quality card. It's looking a little awkward in terms of where it fits within the class based on what we've seen so far with Deep Frost being so spell focused. How are you going to generate those corpses? Are you going to basically generate 6 corpses by turn 5 is what you want to ask yourself here, because it is very good tempo for an aggressive Frost deck. But how do you get there?
Yeah, there's kind of like a version of this deck, right, where you just ignore the board completely and you just go face. Like, you just keep going Smork with Might. Might on 4, you freeze. You swing again, you freeze. And then you do something on 6, and then you have the Frostworm's Fury, like another payoff that just freezes the board and keeps going face. Sounds very fun to just do that. But yeah, like Roffle said, I don't know where the corpse generation is coming from. And whether you actually can stack up enough damage. But I don't know. I think I like this direction. This direction feels more... This feels like something that can be very good in Standard, where healing is a lot more limited. Whereas in Wild, we've never really seen these burn decks that just go over the top with very little minion presence, like, do super well. It's either like heavy OTKs or it's aggro. You don't get to chip down and then lose to Reno decks in this format very much. So yeah, I don't know. Like the card, I think it's more suited to Standard than the Wild format.
All right. Our next card here is the payoff, I think, for all of the spells that we've been talking about. Here's how you 30 to 0 people. Just it might be on turn 10, unfortunately, because you don't have a Sork Apprentice. But it's Death Chiller. It's a 2-mana 2/3 elemental, 2 Frost Runes. After you cast a spell, deal 1 damage to 2 random enemies. So this might sound familiar. It's very similar to something like Flamewaker. An important distinction here is deal 1 damage to 2 random enemies. I believe it will not double hit the enemy hero for 2 damage. So it's a lot worse, I think, than Flamewaker when it comes to actually killing people. But it is 2 mana, so it makes it a little bit easier to combo as a board control tool, I think, in the early mid game.
Yeah, I think it is better as a board control tool just than like a kill 'em tool, because you're like literally doing half the damage as a single Flamewaker. So on that, compounded with the fact that like you don't have a Sorcerer's Apprentice, means that this isn't going to be the same as a Flamewaker. I don't know. This plus Ice Revenant to be the finisher paved the way for an Ice Revenant, because they're both elementals. Is there anything you can do with that? Probably not, but like that's falling in line with something like the Might of Menethil. So no, it's I don't know. Outside of splashing things, Frost seems a little rough right now just because of its lack of lethality. Like, it seems like a really good third rune for either of the 2 other things, but doesn't seem necessarily the strongest as a standalone rune to build around just yet. Even though, like, unfortunately, a lot of the early cards we saw made it look the most fun, and then it just, like, it kind of went nowhere is my problem.
Yeah, this is the one I was super keen on for Wild, but I don't think it's pieced itself together. This card is so depressing, man. Like, if only it could just kill people. But it can't. Even with like Kindling Elemental being able to discount it, things like that, it's just never gonna be enough damage. And don't think you really have the draw or like mana cheat to support anything. And I don't think Wild exclusive offer anything that kind of opens the door for this card / archetype.
Yeah, I know Mage has a lot of those like. We've talked about them as like tempo Frost minions and payoffs and stuff, where you like get a 4 mana, or I think it's like a 5 mana 7/7, things like that, which not even good. but I like those Frost tempo payoffs from Mage. I think eventually get their way shifted into something like Death Knight, and then like a tempo freeze aggro deck or Frost aggro deck would be a little bit more intriguing. But I'm with you guys. Where like right now it just doesn't feel like it's doing a whole lot to actually win games. Maybe once they revert and rotate Ice Revenant, there you go. That's your payoff. No. Okay. What about Mirror Manipulator then? How about this for a payoff? 6 mana, 5/5 undead, 3 Frost runes, Battle Cry. Spend up to 5 corpses. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy for each. So this, I think, can hit the enemy hero 5 times if you're on an empty board or you're just like super lucky. But you need 5 corpses. And if you're trying to kill people with this, probably 5 corpses before turn 6. Which seems a little bit hard, especially in a 3 Frost deck.
Yeah, the problems I see with this are the 3 Frost. First of all, generating those corpses, as we talked about with Might of Menethil, and then on top of that, you kind of have some like antagonism between this and the Might of Menethil, which we said was a pretty decently high quality card if you can get it active. But then if you get it active, you don't really have any corpses left over on turn 6 for this. So like, where are the corpses coming from? That's what I need to know. Where are they? Who killed the people? And how do you generate corpses in 3 Frost? I don't know. But those 2 cards do make an appealing like archetype to build around that's outside of that Frost. It's just like, how do we build it with the cards that we've seen so far? We need to figure out a way to get corpses into this deck, and maybe then it can go somewhere. Like it needs the unholy token spells, but that's just not present in Frost. So like this wants to be a good card, and maybe down the line it will be. Maybe even early on it will be. You just run a bunch of neutral minions, and then like that's how you generate corpses in this deck. Like just to get some tokens going, you get some haunted creepers in there, and you're golden because that's 3 corpses right there. But like right now, I'm not seeing it. So maybe I'm proven wrong. It's really hard to evaluate a new class with so many new mechanics in it, and like you can't just go based on card quality alone, I don't think.
Yeah, I really like this card a lot for the future. Like not now, but like eventually, if there's some sort of more minion heavy Frost deck, which there definitely could be. Like, look, we're getting the first expansion. We don't know what this is gonna look like in the future. But if this is like top end for aggro, that seems amazing. Where like if this is deal 10 to the enemy face, disgusting. If this is consecration and swing board back and recover tempo, disgusting. Like if this is always active on curve, super good and just like more of a on curve face aggro deck. But like Rob was talking about, a lot of conflicting stuff going on with the weapon, a little bit confusing, and don't think it's there yet. But someday, one day, Marrow Manipulator is going to be absolutely filthy. Just wait.
Put it on the list, chat. Just like everything else. Just put it on the list of cards that'll be broken someday.
Play dead any day now, Meowth. Any day now, it's going to break wild.
Sure. Surely, dude. Surely. It does look like they are pushing Frost in a very aggressive way, because we've got Bonebreaker as our next card here, which is a 1-mana 2/2 weapon, 1 Frost rune. After your hero attacks a minion, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. So again, it seems like they're pushing. I'm not saying that Bonebreaker is good in that archetype, but it does seem like they are pushing like an aggressive Frost style deck in the future.
It's Soul DH, except instead of healing, we freeze.
Yeah,
like that's what this archetype is. You just like keep going over the top, you ignore board, and you eventually just kill them with chip damage. And again, can maybe be very good in standard. Like that's something that makes sense. I don't know if it makes perfect sense in a Renathal world, maybe less so. But it makes a lot less sense in Wild. But again, yeah, this is a pretty nasty card, right? This is disgusting if you get like a aggro deck someday.
Yeah. I mean, aggro 101 is minion go face go minion, and this allows you, when you're going face go minion, to go face still. So like it just teaches people how to play aggro.
Yeah, we got there in a very roundabout way. Appreciate you. All right, and then last but not least, so spoiler alert, when it comes to the actual expansion, there is the 1 Frost Rune card that we talked about last week. So it really does not seem like Frost is going to be great right out of the bat, but we do have a 1-drop here, the last one to talk about. Yimijar Frostbreaker. 1 mana, 1/2, 1 Frost Rune. Battlecry, gain +1 attack for each Frost spell in your hand. 1 mana, 3/2, I think is where you're at, where you're happy with this. Upside, like above that is great. But if you're playing this on 1, you're really looking for that 3/2 stat line.
Yeah, I mean, this would have, for this to work, like the hyper aggro Frost deck would need to be a thing. This is a okay 1-drop for that, like, but then you're running a lot of spells that don't necessarily go face, and you really need this to be good on turn 1, and then that means your turn 2 is probably not looking good because you're not playing a minion. So it seems awkward.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's the same thing where you want this to be in a deck that plays lots of minions and goes face, but if you're playing lots of minions and going face, you don't have frost spells. And if you are having frost spells, you don't want a 1-drop that's just like a 3/2. Like, it's very, like, you go around in circles, and it just does not make sense. I will say, I am getting more excited, though, about just the idea of just aggro frost. The more I'm looking at this, like, look, there ain't much among the minions in the class cards, but maybe there's enough payoffs here, and we can patch everything together with neutrals. Pirates have done magic things before in this format. They can maybe do it again.
I was actually thinking the same thing about pirates as well, just because like of the brigand into patches, like that generates a lot of corpses itself.
Yeah. All right. So aggro frost is kind of the archetype you guys are looking at for frost runes, kind of being your main rune here. I think in wild, right, with pirates and I guess the weapons and your Mara manipulator, right? Kind of the top end of the stack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And aside from that, I think that Frost has a lot of interesting like splashability, but not necessarily like there you have to look at the 1 Frost rune cards, things like the Saurian, the Defrost, like even has some potential. Like 1 Frost looks pretty good, going a little bit too far beyond that. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move into the blood runes now. Let's go rotating back to the core set. 2 blood runes for a 5 mana 3/5 undead legendary Deathbringer Sarfang. So this is a 5 mana 3/5 with taunt. Death Rattle. Return this to your hand. It costs health instead of mana. Theoretically, this would go infinite, right? Or it does go infinite because it would keep going back to your hand. But you would have to keep paying the 5 life for the taunt. If you have the life to pay for it, seems like a pretty good card.
Yeah, because if you're facing a board-based deck, you're essentially getting that 5 life back anyway, because it trades into the Sourfang. I'm going to be completely honest with you, and I'm going to overvalue every single blood card because it's like the the rune that feels the most appealing to me. So I love this card. It's fine. It's fine. I love it because it keeps coming back. It's pretty expensive the first time through, but then like it's a free 5/3 or a 3/5 with taunt. So like, pretty reasonable in a control style deck, especially one that manipulates its health total and often has that spare health to give. So certainly a playable card. I readily admit that I'm overrating it though.
Yeah, I think it's fine in like the that like Reno deck, Reno Renathal, things like that. We have so much health to play with. There's kind of interesting things that would be opened up with Molten Giant, but the fact that it's a legendary kind of makes it a little bit harder to lean on like that, because it won't be as consistent. But I don't know, it seems fine. Like in a Reno Renathal deck, I doubt health total is ever a concern, and you just looping 3/5s. Like it seems very, very fine in that in that deck.
And you get corpses each time it dies too, which is a nice upside. I also think that like you've got a lot of just like taking damage with any sort of blood runes that I think Molten Giant is almost always a consideration regardless. Yeah, it'll almost always be good. All right, moving on to our next blood card here, we have Noxious Cadaver. The art on this card is kind of gross. This is my first time actually kind of looking at it. It's a 1 mana 1/2 undead, 1 blood rune. Battlecry, deal 2 damage to an enemy and to your hero. So basically 1 mana 1/2, you take 2, you deal 2. it seems like a really solid card. It's a little bit reminiscent of stuff like Tour Guide or Kobold Librarian, where it's like 1 mana, do a thing that, a little bit of a downside, right? Take the 2, but you get some upside of clearing a creature rather than, drawing card, but still pretty good.
It's much more similar to just like the priest card that we see in Shadow Priest. Although it doesn't, like, it has the upside of potentially clearing off a minion. So if you are on the coin, it can maybe win you back the board. But that card also does 3 damage and didn't see a whole lot of play until Shadow Priest existed as an archetype. So
are we talking about Shadow Bomber?
yes, that's the one. I can never remember.
This can hit an enemy minion though, right?
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, it has, like, I think that is better, because you're probably not necessarily excited about going all out aggro as a blood based deck. It is only 1 blood rune, so it could, potentially be splashed into other runes. It also is an undead itself. We've been talking a lot about like needing 1 mana undead minions to die early on. This could be it, but not super excited about it. It's just like, it's a pretty good card for 1 mana. But I don't know. I just hate missile shots like this that where a flip determines maybe the course of the game on turn 1 feels pretty bad to me.
Oh, it'll be targeted, won't it?
Yeah.
It is. It is targeted.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That's so much better. Okay. I'm wrong. Yeah. No, this is pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. This seems. Yeah. I mean, I think Roffle's opinion, if he got to retake that, would be a little different. Because it's just really good, right? Like Defias Leper, like you said, is a great comparison. So again, blood. Don't think you give a shit about your health total half the time. Like all these cards are just like whatever, ignore it. You're gonna heal anyway. So just super efficient.
Yeah.
Brandable.
Also true.
There we go.
Yep. If you wanted to take 4 damage for some reason,
or if you wanted to deal 4 damage to something like
that.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Next up, speaking of efficient, we have Heart Strike. 1 mana, 1 blood rune for a spell that says deal 3 damage to a minion. If it kills it, gain a corpse. 1 mana, deal 3. Potential corpse generation as well. Seems like a solid card.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not that into it, to be honest. Like,
really?
Maybe I just haven't evaluated like gaining a corpse and how crucial that is or not. What might I deal 3 to a minion, nothing else? Like, like there's no other immediate board impact. We've seen that cards like that with Smite before. You think they're going to be better than they are, but again, maybe just like a little bit of trouble kind of evaluating just how good gaining a corpse is just in general.
Blood is another rune that early on especially seemed to have a little bit of gaps in terms of how it was going to generate the corpses. So I think that's one of the things that actually makes this a consideration. Like, it is only 1 blood rune. You can play it in other decks aside from like a deep blood deck, but you're probably not throwing this into an unholy deck where it doesn't have trouble generating those corpses. If you're thinking about anything, it's maybe a 2 frost, 1 blood, or just like a deep blood deck where you need to find a way to get those corpses. And I think Corp's right. It's probably like we have Holy Smite. Holy Smite's not played in any decks. It just a matter of
we have Extortion as well, but like the tradable is really good.
Yeah. So it's a matter of how valuable that that corpse is, how easily they can do it with other cards, and again, like low pool of cards, like the overall quality of like blood runed cards is going to determine, like we're not comparing this to, like with Holy Smite, you're comparing it to things like that Priest has had over 8-9 years of Hearthstone, like a Penance, like a, whatever, it doesn't even run Penance anymore because it has so many high quality cards available to it that, like, you kind of have to make some compromises when we're talking about a brand new class like this, especially if you're looking to build a 40 card deck.
Yeah, I mean, the comparison to Holy Smite, or what is it? It is Unholy Smite, right? It's the name of the card. I feel like it's a little bit like, I think Reno Priest would 100% be running Unholy Smite if it wasn't the fact that it wasn't the Shadow spell, right? Like, it would love to be slamming stuff like Penance and Smite.
I'm just cracking up at you calling this Unholy Smite rather than Holy, because like the Death Knight. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Wait, what is
Wrong rune,
Holy
meow.
Smite? Yeah. Same thing. You know what I meant.
Yeah, sorry.
Next up, we have Death Strike. Moving on. 4 mana, 1 Blood Rune. For 4 mana, deal 6 to a minion with Lifesteal. A little bit sad that this could only hit a minion and not the opponent's face. Probably for good reason, but 4 mana, deal 6, heal 6. There you go. There's some of your life gain for the Blood Death Knight.
Yeah, I mean, if you're manipulating your health quite a bit, it's probably worthwhile to have ways to clean it back up. We've seen this card. It's a ramped up spellstone almost, and that's a pretty good card for a while. It doesn't require the build up, so that probably makes it better, to be honest with you. As easy as Warlock had at building up. I could very well see this being played in like in a control-y style blood deck. Just again, lack of other options. That type of deck needs removal, and this is going to offer it. Not like a card I'm super excited about or anything, but sure, I'll put it in decks.
Yeah, I haven't really done the deck building side of things, so like I don't know, maybe you just like have to because you don't have enough options. But as like a card by itself, not that exciting. Like Rob said, Spellstone. Spellstone's pretty good, but it's also in a class that wants healing like a lot more. Because the Warlock healing for 7, like, that's probably a lot more important compared to DK. So yeah, not amazing, but might make it just because you need stuff.
I mean, you say that, but we have Sourfang and Obliterate. It's just like 2 cards that we've been talking about. Like, I think it's going to want the healing. I think it initially will probably see play just because of like lack of better healing options, and I could see it very easily being phased out, but it's a lot of healing for 4 mana. Speaking of, let's talk about Corrupted Ashbringer before we start. It's so weird that this is not a legendary weapon or frame compared to normal Ashbringer, which is a little bit sad. But it's a 6 mana, 2 Blood Rune, 5/2 weapon with Lifesteal. Nothing super flashy. We've seen, what is it, the Libram book, Libram of Judgment, I think is the name, that had like a very similar effect. Was never great for a variety of reasons in Paladin. Is the lifesteal in here, like, are we that desperate for healing that we're about to run a 6 mana 5/2 weapon? I guess is the question that we're gonna have to ask ourselves.
I think if you're that desperate to run a 6 mana 5/2 lifesteal weapon, then maybe like the deck itself is not good enough to play to begin with. So this one I'm I was reluctantly going to be adding Death Strikes to my deck. Previously I'm going to be questioning my life choices after if I have to add this card to my deck, I think, because it's just mostly the mana cost. Like 6 mana deal 10, yeah, that's great, but not like, I don't know, big weapons like this tend to be disappointing, I think, in a format as fast as Wild.
Yeah, not super into this one, sadly.
All right, so as we move into the Path of Arthas, we've talked a lot about some just straight up control cards for Death Knight when it comes to Blood Runes. It does seem like the other kind of archetype that Blood's going to get pushed into is a little bit of a hand buff mechanic, as you'll see with a couple of the cards that we're talking about here. Starting with Blood Tap. This is a 2 mana shadow spell that requires you to be running 2 Blood Runes in your deck. Give all minions in your hand +1/+1. Spend 3 corpses to give them +1/+1 more. So at its baseline, it's Smuggler's Run. If you spend 3 corpses, it's a Corrupted Don't Feed the Animals. If I'm getting my card names right, I think that's what it is. So at its baseline, 2 mana +1/+1. 3 corpses +2/+2.
Yeah, so this basically is just a Corrupted Don't Feed if you're because you're always just going to wait till it's corrupted, or in this case, you have the corpses in this case. So it basically is just that card. The card is borderline playable for a while. It was okay in like the early iterations of what is now the Copper Beast Hunter. But that deck had like Buzzard to draw cards. It had things like Tundra Rhino to send stuff face. Like, I don't know, Paladin hand buff is a little bit more efficient and has fallen off dramatically. these cards seem less efficient. Seems like an instance where like Death Knight is a worse paladin. So I don't like. I mentioned I'm really high on the blood stuff. It's the control blood stuff that I'm overvaluing, not the hand buff. And maybe I'm gonna be horribly wrong, but like this does not look that appealing to me as an archetype.
Yeah, it's kind of a little tough where you obviously want to be collecting resources in hand to buff them, but you need things to die on the board, so you need to play minions. So it's a little weird. Like Roffle said, we do not have Buzzard. Like you can't just magically refill your hand perfectly, like you would like. So a little weird. Yeah, I don't see it. But yeah, strong card again. Maybe we can put it on the shelf with the Marrow thing.
Yeah.
Decent. Maybe someday.
Yeah, like
hand buff in any class needs card draw. That's what held
Exactly.
Paladin back for so long. That's why you even considered running Don't Feed the Animals, is you got access to Buzzard. Without like substantial card draw and a little bit of redundancy even, like going all in on a hand buff game plan is just not going to work.
All right, next up we have, speaking of hand buff, Vicious Bloodworm. 2 mana, 3/2 beast. Battle cry, give a minion in your hand attack equal to this minion's attack. So kind of scaling some of those hand buffs. It feels like, just like Blood Tap, really just put it on the shelf, I think, until, in terms of hand buff mechanics, until we see more. But is this just playable on its own as a 2 mana, 3/2 and like a 2/1 holy 1 blood kind of aggressive style of Death Knight?
Maybe. I think you really want this to land on something with charge or at least rush, and that's like you're going to be relying on neutrals for that. So like, is Argent Horse Rider going to be your savior for that type of thing? I would be surprised, but I've been surprised before. I don't know. It seems like just a decent quality card, but like, if you're behind on board, the opponent trades up into your buffed minion next turn anyway, right? So like it doesn't really accomplish much unless you get some like Divine Shield or Rush minions so that you can capitalize on when the attack goes through.
Yeah, I think it looks at glance better. It looks better than it actually is. Like I don't think this is great. Yeah.
All right. Next up we have Hematurge. 2 mana, 2/3, 2 blood runes, battle cry, spend a corpse to discover a blood rune card. So very similar to what we just talked about, a similar card for Frost. It can discover a 1 blood rune, a 2 blood rune, or 3. So you can be 2 blood runes splashing for another rune, and then discover a 3 blood rune card. It reminds me a lot of like Museum Curators and other Spite Historians of like 2 mana, 2/3. You have the little requirement of using up a corpse, but you get to discover, situational card potentially. Like we talk a lot about like class bonuses and missing that. You're kind of guaranteed class bonus because you're only discovering Death Knight cards, right? So 2 mana, 2/3, discover potentially a good card.
Yeah, I'm into this for that control deck. Like again, if you can generate the corpses early, sure. Like you're very happy to play this. It's it's better statted than either Nether Spite or certainly Museum Curator. And like you said, like again, narrow card pool, always going to be worth taking a look at discover effects like this. But over time, this will become a worse and worse card. Early on, yeah, it's the River Croc that gets me a card. That's what control deck wouldn't want that.
Yeah, seems very, very solid. Like it.
Yeah. Speaking of that control Death Knight, we've got 3 mana shadow spell Asphyxiate, 2 blood runes to play it in your deck. Destroy the highest attack enemy minion. Sometimes a 3 mana assassinate. Other times might not kill the minion that you really want to kill. I don't really know how to feel about this, just because you're going to be limited with the options that you can have in a control deck with this limited card pool. How you guys feeling about it?
I think you probably just run this in that style of deck early on. It's it's more expensive than a Shadow Word Death, but somewhat more flexible. You could argue it's certainly better than a Deadly Shot, certainly better than an Assassinate in most situations. I think most of the time, the fact that you're paying less mana makes it, better than like the slight downside that you can't necessarily kill the exact minion you want to. But I think more often than not, it is going to be the minion you want. Like in a situation where you're facing down a Neptulon, yeah, like I want to kill the Neptulon. So this does that. All right, so again, it's not like a super exciting card. It's just going to be one where we have limited options, so we play it.
Yep, seems like a decent summary where, much like the deal 6 lifesteal thing. Although I think that card might actually be a little better, funnily enough.
Agree with you on that. All right, next up we have Darkfallen Neophyte. 3 mana, 2/5 for an undead, 1 blood rune requirement. Battlecry, spend 2 corpses to give all minions in your hand +2 attack. Again, that hand buff hold mechanic, we're not sold on it, I guess, is kind of the general feeling. Just doesn't seem like blood runes in Death Knight have enough card draw to support the mechanic. It's also a little bit weird that a lot of these cards are just buffing attack and not kind of +1/+1, which is actually a huge deal, especially when it comes to hand buffing. So 3 mana, 2/5, spend 2 corpses to give your entire hand +2 attack. Actually doesn't seem that appealing.
No, I'm like if the direction they're going with hand buff in blood is only give attack, then I want no part of that, because like again, if that's not landing on chargers, then what's the point? Because like my opponent's just going to trade through it, and like I don't get the benefit of that extra attack. And we haven't seen any charge mechanics from blood yet, so it's disappointing.
Yeah, this is kind of weird. It's it's like a hand buff deck, but it's leaning way more towards OTK. Like it's a lot closer to some like Quest Mage than hand buff Paladin almost, where this is like a boar deck, from what I'm seeing. I like it a lot more than the 2-drop, because obviously like you can, like if you're going for a strategy like this, you want it to be something that's degenerate, where you're just like playing out a whole bunch of 1 mana deal 3 charges and things like that, or deal 5 charges. Compared to just the targeted buff. So like you need this to have the highest payoff, right? And this card has like way more room to be broken. So yeah, this would need to be in like somehow like a OTK on turn 6 type thing, where you're just vomiting out like 4 little 1-cost boars that deal like 7 damage. Maybe it's a thing that can happen, but not this expansion. maybe someday.
Like the hand buff paladins of old that ran like 2 boars, 2 bluegills, 2 argent horse riders, like a style of deck like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Except it's the only thing that you can do. Like it's not like you don't even have the redundancy of the other stuff. It's like you're all in on boars.
All right, so let's move into the blood cards for March of the Lich King, the actual expansion. It seems like they're very heavily pushing the blood rune control style deck in the expansion itself. So we've already seen Corpse Explosion and Vampiric Blood, which are heavy blood rune requirements. Speaking of heavy blood rune requirements, we have a legendary here in Alexandros Mograine. 7 mana, 7/7 undead. 3 blood runes to put them in your deck. Battlecry. For the rest of the game, deal 3 damage to your opponent at the end of your turns. So kind of like the quest for Warlock, right? The Demon Seed, kind of just a clock, right? You play this in your control deck, it'll eventually end the game, right? Especially if you can brain it, the clock gets halved. I don't know if this will be fast enough for Wild, is kind of the issue, because it's a very slow clock against OTK decks and other Reno decks that you are spending 7 mana on. I think the big upside, you don't have to spend any corpses. There's no corpse requirement in order to get this powerful effect that you're trying to end games with, which I think is an upside. That being said, I know, Roffle, you were nodding your head when I read this out loud. How you feeling about it?
Oh, I love this card. I love the character. I love the effect, but it's horrendously bad. like this is not something that's going to win you games of Hearthstone. I'm gonna try, but you die. You just die. This doesn't scale like fatigue does, and fatigue is often too slow in our format unless you're like a mill druid against a mill druid. They're going to beat you. That race is theirs. So yeah, this card is horrendous, but I love it, and nobody can tell me not to play it because I'm going to.
Imagine if this was like an odd warrior card, and you kind of look at it and you think about it, you're just like, it still does nothing. Like it still just does absolutely nothing
Nope.
in this format. It tricks you. It would have to have probably like deal 5 damage, something like that, and then we're talking about like a real quick clock. Like that's a lot. But deal 3, it'll add up. Like
Yeah.
there are going to be matchups where it's okay, but like half the slow decks in this format are Reno decks anyway. So, like, in those sort of situations, it's often much more about board and just like a swing turn and pushing and just like low thabbing and things like that. It's not about like dealing 12 damage worth of 3 damage. It's 12 turns of 3 damage. Like, that's not going to get the job done. So, yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you. But I'm happy that Roffle's happy.
Oh, I couldn't be happier.
A card that I am not going to be happy to see playing against me though is Soul Stealer. 8 mana 5/5 undead. Battle Cry. Destroy all other minions. Twist Nether on a stick. Gain a corpse for each enemy destroyed. Again, 3 blood rune requirement. But if you are playing a 3 blood rune deck, this is like this is one of the reasons, if not the reason, I think, to play a 3 blood rune control deck. This card seems kind of nutty.
Yeah, yeah. Like this and maybe like Vampiric Blood are what you're paying the requirements for, and like they also kind of work well together because we talked about with Vampiric Blood that you like maybe sometimes have a hard time generating corpses yourself. Well, this card kind of does it. So Twisting Nether has been maybe outclassed in terms of like the mana requirement for a while, but like again, limited options for the Death Knight class, and like you get a 5/5. You not only clear the board, but you get like to start the turn with or the next turn with attacker's initiative, and that's an important thing in a game like Hearthstone. So yeah, very good card. It's a matter of whether like there are enough good blood cards to make a deck out of it once again. So this Vampiric Blood, and I think to maybe a lesser extent Corpse Explosion kind of make you consider that. All of the cards that I'm excited for are the actual expansion cards in Blood, it would seem. So, well, I guess Patchwork also, or whatever his name is. I'm also into.
Yeah, I mean, this is about as good as a late game control like wipe gets. Like this is really good. It's not probably quite like 8 mana Gigafin. Not 4 mana Gigafin, but if you actually pay like 8 mana for the Gigafin, it's not that
Who does
far
that?
off. Yeah, I don't imagine. But it's not far off that level of strength. Like it's really, really, really good. And so yeah, all I'm saying is Odd Warrior. I'm saying Odd Warrior, Odd Warrior, Odd Warrior with these 3 floods.
It's basically the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I used to be hyped for Lord Godfrey, and now we have this non-legendary Twisting Nether on a stick. How times have changed. All right, we've got 2 more blood runes. Like I said, they're really pushing a blood Death Knight kind of archetype in standard. We've got Bone Guard Commander, 8 mana, 8/8 undead with taunt, 1 blood rune requirement. Battle Cry, raise up to 6 corpses as 1/2 footman with taunt. Again, so these 6 corpses will not re-give you corpses. That's our lesson that we've learned. 8 mana, 8/8 with taunt. That gives you 6 1/2s with taunt. So it's going in a control style deck? Question mark. It is 8 mana, but it is a lot of taunt.
Yeah. It's a lot of numbers. Probably not worth like the mana being a lot of number, right? Like that's the it's like a spreading plague that comes out 2 turns later and has a pretty hefty investment involved, but doesn't require the opponent to be wide. They could be tall. I don't know. Maybe you consider running it in an unholy, like 2 unholy, 1 blood, as just like a splash this bad boy in. I don't know. Like you would probably want more than just this as your payoff for blood, though. I think in like the turn that it's coming out is very slow and wild. If you don't like have some of the health buffering that you have in a full blood type deck, so it's a lot of numbers. I don't know if the numbers quite work out in a favorable way for the card. Is my concern.
Yeah. Pretty good. Finding a home seems difficult. Like that feels like it's the vibe, I think.
Yeah, I did give you the question mark because like maybe it goes in like the 2 unholy 1 blood as like the top end of a tokeny style build along Denathrius. If you were playing a slower build, I don't know if that's the route you want to take, but if that was the point of the question mark, and you guys kind of brought it up as well. It seems like more of a splash worthy card than it feels like a huge payoff for your control style build where you're going to struggle to make corpses anyways.
And just might be another card that again just better suited the standard. Where you can run that Denathrius, like go wide mid-rangey type deck. A little bit better for that.
It does seem pretty nasty in a Denathrius, or even into like an Insatiable Devourer, which like in certain decks has even in wild like outperformed my expectations for it. So like, yeah, good synergy with Infuse, I think that's what I'm getting from it.
Yeah. Can I, since we're on the topic of the tokeny style decks, can I interest you guys in a Sylvanas as another payoff for all these tokens? That's 6 mana, I think, like the Infused Sylvanas.
Yeah, I mean, you can. I don't know if that suddenly makes her a great payoff
Maybe
or
not,
better than
but-
just like killing the opponent with Denathrius, but like I'll take it.
6 greater
Man,
than 4
I
or 10.
I hurt my brain for a second where I was like, guys, the 1/2 Risens, they're not going to contribute to Denathrius, but no.
They contribute
That's
to
how that
Infuse,
works.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, just
Beautiful,
the
beautiful.
corpses they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get a little confused there.
All right. Last card here for Blood Runes. Soul Breaker, 3 mana, 3/2 weapon, 1 Blood Rune requirement. After your hero attacks and kills a minion, gain 2 corpses. There you go. Here's your control style tool that gains you corpses alongside the 1 mana deal 3 gain a corpse, stuff like that. Seems aight with our limited options when it comes to like the control Blood Rune deck.
Yeah, it's probably a card that'll get outclassed later, but like seems just pretty good enough to start with that control deck.
Yep. All right, so kind of just to recap for Blood Runes, obviously a control style archetype as well as kind of a hand buff archetype. We're kind of in agreement that the hand buff archetype kind of on the shelf for now until we see better cards and more synergistic cards for it. It does seem like either the 3 Blood Rune or like a 2 Blood Rune 1 Frost kind of control shell, whether it's Reno or it probably is Reno, but whether it's 3 Blood Runes or like 2 Blood 1 Frost, seems like it may have legs, just because you also have kind of the solid neutral control package, right, of Reno, Renathal, Zeph, Theotar, Mutanus. Maybe it's not Theotar once he gets nerfed to 6, but you have this whole disruption package that you get to run alongside some of the controlling powerful kind of payoff cards that Blood has. Let's move into Unholy. The last time we talked about Unholy, you guys got super hype about the even Death Knight possibilities of Unholy. So let's see if some of the new cards that we've seen, continue the excitement. And I say that looking at the first card that we're going to talk about, and I think that's yes. So this is Grave Strength, 4 mana, Shadow Spell, 3 Unholy Runes. Give your minions +1 attack. Spend 5 corpses to give them +3 attack instead. It is important to note that this is permanent attack. It's not just temporary, something like Savage Roar or things like that. This is permanent attack when it comes to Grave Strength.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I wish it cost 1 less Unholy Rune is my concern, but like maybe you just go all in on Unholy if you're building that deck that we've been discussing, and maybe this is a good enough reason to do that if you can generate a wide enough board. Either way, in like an all-out Unholy deck, this is probably a reasonably good quality card, right? Like it's you play Branching Paths in a tokeny style Druid deck, and sometimes that's just a good enough finisher. And this is often a little bit better than that. So yeah, looks like an interesting card to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure even. is just like all unholy because you want to play this. Like this is just so broken in anything that pushes wide. I'm pretty sure like even Charm we would give up literally every single card except for Chisel, and probably the Legendary. Those are the only two that would be like hands off. Like I think just about everything else would be fair game if even Shaman could get its hands on a trade, and play this. But even DK probably doesn't go quite as wide as something like even Shaman, but it's still like an absurd amount of damage. Permanent blood lost for 1 less mana. Like, yeah, it's really, really good.
Yeah, and we think that the even Unholy is not going to have any issue with the corpse requirement as well, right? Which is kind of the you're not happy playing this for the un.
No,
I was going to say corrupted half, but yeah.
No. You see this card, it's giving +3 attack. Yeah. Like if it's not, then unplayable, beyond unplayable.
All right. Speaking of another payoff card, Giants. I heard Giants are good and wild, where we can get them really cheap really quickly. Let's talk about Stitched Giant. 10 mana, 8/8 undead, 2 unholy runes, cost 1 less for each corpse you spent this game. Seems like it fits right in.
Yeah, this will probably come down pretty quickly. It's kind of like a Giga Totem in even Shaman is how I would imagine it right now, but like without the ability to copy it, so that makes it a little bit worse because you don't have like a splitting axe, but like you don't always need a splitting axe to make a 0 mana 8/8 good. So yeah, seems like it fits right into that deck, whether you're going all unholy or not.
I think it's a little bit overrated, because I think like the corpse spending isn't quite there. Like there isn't as much as you'd hope. And so like if you like there are a few cards, right, that spend 4 on 4. That gets really awkward, like in terms of mana, because then this goes to 6 for your next turn. Like you can't really get it all the way down. That you spend another 4, it costs 2. Like you can't play it that same turn. So it's kind of like a card that realistically probably isn't coming down until like turn 7 or so. And at that point, big stats are kind of making less and less of an impact. So I'm actually not like 100% sold on this. I am going to include it in like Theory Cross and things like that because 0 mana 8/8, very tantalizing in Wild historically. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised it's actually a lot worse than what people think.
Yeah. I kind of glossed over the having to spend the corpses, but there's a couple of like 2-drops here that we'll talk about that I think will get you there alongside the 5 mana 5/2/2s as well.
Yeah, the thing is like the margin is so fine for getting this down for 0 versus like 2. Like and that matters a lot with how the curve would work in an even Death Knight deck. So if there are a couple 2-drops that can fuel it, that would be huge. But I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be consistent enough. But yeah, we'll get to it.
Yeah. All right. So our next undead card here, unholy, sorry, is Plagued Grain. 1 mana spell, 3 unholy runes. 1 mana, gain 4 corpses. Shuffle 4 crates into your deck that summon a 2/2 undead when drawn. So I'm assuming these 2/2s will also give you a corpse. I believe. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but this is just generate a ton of corpses into your deck. Is it worth it?
Historically, these type of effects have not been good because you have to find them. Like, so you're probably playing this as 1 mana gain 4 corpses. Is that worth? I don't know, but I like I'm leaning towards no, but like I have no way of knowing because like we haven't had access to like actually play and spend corpses yet. So it seems like a no from me, but I'm only evaluating it based. I think you need to evaluate this based on the immediate effect in a format as fast as Wild. The shuffling stuff into your deck, historically not very good, because it takes a long time to actually get there. So I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I would co-sign all of that. I would go to a no right now though.
Okay. All right. Next up, we have Bone Digger Geist. Another Geist. 2 mana, 2/2 undead, 1 unholy rune. Battlecry, spend a corpse to gain +1/+2. So on our even Death Knight that we're hyping up, Spider Tank, baby, for 2 mana. Let's go.
We found our we had our Giga Totem earlier. Now it's a Totem Golem, and seems good, right? You got to spend the corpses. It basically is just a Totem Golem for a Giga Totem in Stitch Giant. Like it's like it reduces the cost because you spend a corpse. It's perfect.
Yeah, I mean this is what I was looking for. So yeah, love it. We're even DK. I'm getting more and more hyped.
It's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good.
All right, next up we have Anti-Magic Shell. So this was originally 4 mana when we saw the original Lich King. 4 mana +2/+2. Unfortunately, they nerfed/buffed it. Definitely a nerf in our eyes. 3 mana. Yeah. Three mana. Unfortunately, that is not an even number. For a shadow spell, 1 Unholy Rune. Give your minions +1/+1 and can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. Man.
They knew. They knew. And people say they don't, balance around the wild format. This is proof. We were expecting this at 4 mana. It's a little disappointing. It's still, if there is a token based non, which everything in Unholy seems token based. If there's a non-even version of this deck, it's probably just happily running this card because. It wants to get ahead of, it's like a baby Savage Roar permanent buff. Yeah.
Not even. So.
Not even, so not interested, right? That's the core tagline. Speaking of a not even card, we have I don't know how to pronounce this. Immerjar Deathbringer. 3 mana, 3/3 undead. 2 Unholy Runes for a taunt. So it's a 3 mana, 3/3 taunt. Death Rattle. Spend 3 corpses to summon a 3/3 Risen Immerjar with Taunt. So the Death Rattle will not give you a corpse. I'm assuming the front half of it will. I guess before we even evaluate how good the card is, does the front half dying count as if you need the 3rd corpse?
I would say yes, because it when in order to activate the Death Rattle, it has to die, right? Yeah. So it generates the corpse when it dies. But we'll have to see.
Will we see, though? It's not an even cost card, so it's not going to see play, right?
No, we're evaluating these we talked about this last week. We can't tunnel in too much, but at the same time, it seems really hard to pull this off on curve, which is when you need it to happen, right? And
yeah, I don't like this card very much. Not great. Yeah, I thought it was Battlecry at first, and I was a little bit more into it. If it's more difficult to happen, it's just a bigger payoff. So not fantastic.
Yeah, I also just think it's going to be extremely difficult to have it active on turn 3, right? If you're playing some of these other good 2-drops that you want to be running anyways. All right, next up we have Possessifier. It's the champion card for our last world champion. Woo! But it's a 5 mana 3/3, 1 Unholy Rune. 5 mana 3/3 Battlecry. Summon 2 1/1 fighters with Rush and Reborn. So 5 mana for 5 corpses. And those 2 1/1s that you summon with Rush, obviously the Reborn half will also have Rush. So it's 5 mana 3/3, deal 4, gain a bunch of corpses as well. Doesn't actually seem so bad.
No, it seems pretty good. It's very splashable. We talked earlier about how other runes have difficulty in generating corpses. This can shore that up a little bit. It is coming out a little bit late for our format, I think, is the big issue. But it does do some things. It does help swing the board back. I don't know that Unholy necessarily has signaled to me that it wants to be the splash rune in a Reno deck, but maybe you consider it.
I mean, Flipper Friends, this is a little worse, but Corpse is good, so seems okay.
Until we get a better option, right? It seems like it's going to be really good as if you need corpses, maybe splash Unholy for the things like this.
Until we get Gloop's glorious Gloop mouth. then we're talking.
And then
We
this
can
card's
make this a
busted. You're not
5-star
cutting it
card.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It can be 5 stars.
Yeah. All right. Let's move into Path of Arthas cards here. Starting off with the legendary spell called the Scourge. 9 mana shadow spell, 2 unholy runes. Fill your board with random undead. I haven't done the math on this. There's no way this card's actually good, right? It's 9 mana in wild. Yeah. All right.
It's 9 mana in wild, even if you're getting like a board full of 8s and 10s. Well, maybe then you might consider it, but like you got to survive until turn 9 somehow, and you need a 9 mana card like this to potentially, or a build around card like this to win the game. And there are a lot of really bad undead. Like, we talked the last week about how we need some turn 1 undeads. This card doesn't want that, and we saw some turn 1 undeads coming out.
Yeah. This alongside Sunwell for your spiteful Death Knight for the Roffle YouTube video, like 3 months into the expansion when you're desperate for content. I got you.
I'll have to be pretty hard up to start considering that one, because again, 9-drop's not good. You don't want to be summoning 9-drops in off of spiteful.
But when this video eventually happens, I need credit, or maybe I don't want credit if it's gonna be really bad. No,
Yeah, you don't want any part of that.
All right, next up, Unholy Frenzy, 3 mana, 1 Unholy Rune. Choose an enemy minion. Your minions attack it. Resummon any that die. Could have sworn we've seen this exact card in Hunter, Devouring Swarm, but instead of getting added back to your hand, they come back on the board. So you're paying 3 extra mana to probably save 3 mana, but it is three mana, which is kind of a lot.
So bad, I think.
I don't know. Like, I don't.
Ooh, point of contention. We love this. All right.
Isn't it kind of just good? You get to remove 1 big minion, maintain a board advantage, and double the you're effectively doubling the corpse count of the board that you have. Like, I think it's okay. Like, as just like a push through a taunt and maintain your board lead, or push through like an on curve Raza or something like that, and you just get your board back. Like, I don't know, it gives your minions immune for a turn. Is that good in a board based deck? Sometimes.
I think part of the reason Devouring Swarm was like interesting and worth considering playing was the fact that you could like develop a board, then Devouring Swarm, right? Like, it's a lot harder to do this when you have 3 mana and you don't have Buzzard to combo with it as well, right? I'm making the direct comparison to Devouring Swarm because that's like the card that we've kind of seen similar to this before. Well, there's the other Hunter card that resummons things that have died this turn. Revenge of the Wild, Revenge of Beasts. It's like a 2 mana resummon all beasts that have died this turn. It feels like a combination of those 2 cards. None of those were good enough in Wild. Obviously, doubling the corpse counter, I think, is the interesting point there, right? Like, if doubling the corpse counter is super important, super impactful, then I think it can see play. But I also think, like, in Unholy, I don't know how hurting we're going to be looking at some of these cards that we've seen for corpses. So,
yeah. I mean, I very well could be wrong, but it seems just like I'm not making a case for it being a super strong card. I just think it's like at least worth taking a look at.
It's not awful like Corpse Set, right?
It's awful. I think it's awful. You're not going to drag me up with you, Meowth. I'm going to stay down here in the land of 0 stars.
Well, all right, we'll write this down, come back to it in a couple months, see who was right, who was wrong. All right, next up we have Tomb Guardians, 4 mana shadow spell, 2 unholy rune requirement. Summon 2/2/2 zombies with taunt. Spend 4 corpses to give them reborn. So 4 mana for 2/2/2s with taunt baseline. If you spend 4 corpses, you get 2/2/2s plus 2/2/1s. With taunt.
It's not great, but you got to get the giant down somehow.
That's
yep,
exactly what I was thinking. Like, like you gotta find a way to spend corpses if you're playing that deck, and this does it. So sure.
is also part of why I thought the Giant was overrated, because like this isn't great, but
You would have to play it in order to get it down.
it's not awful. I don't know. It's like better than Saronite Chain Gang, so that's neat.
That's a very low bar that we're passing here, I think.
Yeah, and it also does like give you additional corpses because they aren't risen zombies, so you can spend them on like your grave strength. Like it prepare because you do need a pretty hefty corpse investment for a grave strength. So this one does actually seem as though it refunds your corpses that you spend on them because it's just giving them reborn. So
yeah. All right. Moving into March of the Lich King cards here, we've got 3 undead ones to talk about. Starting with Blightfang, legendary 3 mana 3/3 beast, 1 unholy rune requirement. Battle Cry, infect all enemies with Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 zombie with taunt for your opponent. So basically, if you're playing against, let's say, an odd paladin, you play this, you infect their 6 dudes, and then you kill their 6 dudes. Let's say with a corpse explosion or something. That's a really bad example. With a board wipe or with your creatures, you get 2/2s with taunt. It's a lot happening. It feels kind of weird because it kind of wants you to be super far behind in order to get a lot of value out of it. And if you're playing like an unholy based deck, it's kind of hard that you're going to be doing that if you're playing a lot of tokening based strategies. That being said, it is 1 unholy rune, potentially very splashable in something like a 2 blood 1 unholy, where you have some of those board wipes to maybe take advantage of this.
Yeah, I think that this is another one that kind of makes you rethink and consider splashing in Unholy for a either control style deck or even that like Reno type deck, because that's where it seems to be a better fit than in like you said, it just how it plays is sort of at odds with how most of the cards that we've seen in an Unholy style deck wants to play. So I think it makes sense to me to look elsewhere and maybe you consider it in like as a weirdish sort of spreading plague type thing, like slower somehow, despite the animation being reverted in spreading plague than a spreading plague, but like it gets there eventually, kind of. So it's a baby plague.
I think it's not very good. Very weird, but I'm gonna go towards bad.
Yeah, I think the only place it's seeing play, like you're not playing this in your like aggressive token style unholy deck. You're playing this in a control deck, it feels like, and you play this against something like Even Shaman as a way to like swing the board back in your favor as well as generate a ton of corpses.
The thing about Even Shaman though is their minions never die because they have buffs for them. So you die before their minions die. I could see this as more as like an answer to a like a pirate rogue. And I think there it does a very good job in something hyper aggro because like the zombie taunt sort of like propagates itself where it once you get to kill like the first patches, say, even with your hero power, you kill it with your hero power, it dies, you get a taunt totem. They have to keep trading into that with like their parachute brigands, and then you keep getting more zombies. So like that's the only time I see it being at all useful. But then like I don't know, a single Dread Corsair ruins that plan, and also it's good into one deck. You need to start reconsidering adding that card to your deck.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move into our next card here, which is Meat Grinder. 3 mana 3/4 mech, 1 unholy rune. Battle Cry, shred a random minion in your deck to gain 3 corpses. So you're obviously playing this in a deck with a bunch of really crappy creatures that you don't care about so that you gain corpses. It's you think about it like a spider tank that gains you 3, right? Because you're never seeing the card that it shreds. So
it juices your marrow, Gar, with the possibility of completely destroying your marrow. But it's weird. It's really, again, going to depend on how valuable corpses are. I don't I don't care about destroying a minion in my deck, whether it's good or not. Like that's not meaningful. It's, do I want to play a spider tank so that I can gain corpses? Is the question I'm asking here, which I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a hard no on that one. I assume. I don't know. To be
Also,
determined.
we missed one of the unholy cards that I think I'm most excited about. I just realized in Path of Arthas. Right, we haven't talked about Nerubian Swarm Guard, have we?
Did we not talk about this last week?
I don't
Don't
think so.
remember.
Okay. Well,
It's all blurring together, me.
all right. Circling back around to a card that we might have missed. I don't know if we talked about this last week or not, but we're gonna touch on it again this week just in case. Nerubian Swarm Guard, 4 mana, 1/3 undead, 1 unholy rune requirement. So it's a 4 mana 1/3 with taunt. Battlecry, summon 2 copies of this minion. Baseline 4 mana 3/9 with taunt. What is that? Druid minion that we used to cheat out all the time with Oaken summons. Ritualist,
Bog
4
off?
mana. The 4 mana 3/9.
Zoldrak Ritualist.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So at its baseline, it's that, right? Serenite Chain Gang esque. Smack one little buff on it with some of these blood runes, gets a ton better. But yeah, how are we feeling about it?
Yeah, I think even if we did talking about it in the context of some of the new cards that we've seen is worthwhile, because I see a lot of people like showing this as like the payoff for hand buff, and yeah, sure, maybe in standard, but like not in wild.
Yeah.
I see this as like more of a potential like grave rune or grave strength payoff. Like it helps you build a wide board for that type of effect, and also helps like protect your smaller minions that can then trade up with a grave strength type thing. So that's where I see it like being valuable.
Like in the even zoo deck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because like it basically does a thing like what even Shaman excels at, which is making small things and then buffing them up to bigger things once they're on board.
It's a lot of bodies, and they're very annoying. Like, 1/3 taunts. I mean, it's pretty good, like stat wise for cost. Like getting that many taunt bodies, we've seen this before with some like giggling inventor, just like very annoying, to try and punch through all of that. So, I don't know. Like I don't think you need to go any hand buff route with this. Just anything that's defensive wants this. I don't know though, because 3 power is so little, and the ability for it to get value traded up is pretty brutal. But at the same time, if you're playing a deck like even DK, you're probably in control of what trades are getting made in the first place. Like, so it probably doesn't get abused too much. So, pretty interesting card actually.
All right. The more we talk about it, the less I think that we talked about it last week. So thanks for pointing that out, Roffle. Thanks for circling us back around. And then circle back around again to our last unholy card here in Necrotic Mortician. 2 mana, 2/3, 2 unholy runes. Battlecry. If a friendly undead died after your last turn, discover an unholy rune card. So kind of the last in our cycle here of 2 drops that discover. Again, just a reminder, it can discover 1 unholy rune, 2 unholy rune, 3 unholy rune cards, even if you're not in those runes in deck building. So basically, if you decided to go a 2 unholy, 1 frost route, you can discover your bloodlust, the grave strengths off of this card. Simple, just be skilled, always hit it every time. But yeah, I think we don't need to talk too much about it because it seems very similar to what we've said about the other 2 cost cards, right? Like it's.
Yeah, I will say that this is probably the one I'm the least excited about, just because like things in hand seem less valuable for unholy than things on board, and so like this is just making a river croc. But yeah, it's again because of the low card pool we talked about earlier. Same reasons you probably just play it anyway.
Just want to rank the 3 of them?
Yeah. I think it's probably Frostblood Unholy, and Frost and Blood are probably neck and neck, just because they both want that card generation to begin with, and seem a little bit easier to activate as well.
I probably do Blood Frost, right? Because your Frost is not always going to be active, but
I mean, neither is your blood though, right? Like you're not always going to have a corpse on turn 2. You're usually going to have a minion to kill on turn 2 with frost.
this seems like
Much to
highly
ponder.
meta dependent. Why did you ask us this, Corb?
Sorry, much to ponder, much to think about.
Yeah. Regardless, I think all three of them are good though, like in their respective decks.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. We're not done yet with Death Knight, guys. They revealed 90 cards on us, so you guys have to bear with us as we go through our last little set here, which are the ones that require no runes to play them, so they're splashable in every deck. Thankfully, there's a lot fewer of these than everything else that we've talked about. Starting with Rune Forging is a 1 mana spell. 1 mana shadow spell, draw a weapon. Spend a corpse to reduce its cost by 1. Hey, would you like to tutor your super impactful weapon that'll eventually get printed? Or tutor your Frostmourne, or I guess tutor the Rhymefang sword, the one that discounts all your spells in Frost. Seems like a very powerful effect, if not now, for future down the line.
Yeah, like Death Knight is a weapon class, and so eventually there will be something that's makes this worth. I haven't yet seen it, or yet seen a weapon that I'm super excited about. So like that's my hesitation with this card. But I think down the line it's 0 mana draw weapon, right?
Kinda. I mean, yeah. I mean, it just depends how hard it is to get the corpse active, because otherwise the mana discount might not really do anything. If we're looking at something like the Frost, True Silver. I forgot its name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like hard to get that active before like turn 3 probably, because of the lack of Frost corpse generation. But yeah, maybe someday. Tutoring good. If this was like an Evolve Shaman card before we got the good Evolve Shaman tutor, then yeah, we'd be playing this.
Here's how you get your corpses. Body Bagger. 1 mana, 1/3 undead. Battlecry, gain a corpse. Boom. There you go.
Boom.
1/3 body, gain a corpse. Can't be terrible, especially early on.
Probably worth a look in like a Reno deck that has trouble generating corpses, maybe.
I think it's very, very, very good. Like, you just put this in anything that you can. Flash 1.
Yeah. It's just not your even Death Knight, guys. Just not that.
Yeah.
Last but not least, we have I guess not last but not least, but last in the core set for these unruined cards is Chillfall and Baron. 3 mana, 2/2 undead. Battlecry and Death Rattle draw a card. 3 mana, 2/2 at its base. Draw a card. Get you that second card a little bit later on.
Yeah, worth a look in a class with limited options, especially in any like you just play this in a Reno deck, right? Like, what else are you gonna play? Like, and then you look at it in your blood control decks as well.
Yeah, exactly. That was very, very efficient in those slower decks. So, good.
All right, moving into the Path of Arthas, we have Corpse Bride. 5 mana, 4/4 undead. Battlecry, spend up to 8 corpses. Summon a Risen Groom with stats equal to the amount spent. 5 mana, 4/4. Summon a dude. Using up all your corpses. It's a little bit sus.
Don't love that.
Yeah, we have talked so many times that just like piles of stats do not, especially single pile of stats, does not win in our format. And unless you're following this up immediately with like a battle master or something and killing the opponent, I don't see that being worth. Like that's the payoff, and doesn't seem terribly reliable.
Yeah. All right. Our last card here, Malignant Horror. 4 mana, 2/4 undead with Reborn. At the end of your turn, spend 5 corpses to summon a copy of this minion. So it'll copy any stat buffs. It'll copy the Reborn mechanic. I can see it getting out of hand if you consistently had 5 corpses to spend on it.
Gotta spend the corpses on something, Meowth.
Yep. You read my mind again.
I mean,
you're generating them left, right, and center. You need to spend them somewhere, and I don't. Can we give it rush somehow? Like that would.
Look,
But it's on the end of your
good.
turn, so does rush even matter?
It's good because it's
No.
a lot of bodies for the bloodlust, you know. Like
Yeah.
it just fuels itself and it steals all of it, and you
But-
literally just have to spend the blood. You have to
Right.
spend them on something. Like you,
Yeah.
you need to play this in the giant deck.
That's so many corpses too, but like
Oh yeah.
that's
Now I really don't want to play this
That gets your
giant.
giant down by half, like you know. So like you just got to do it.
I don't want to play this giant anymore. It's not worth it. It can't.
No,
be.
See
you
what I
will
mean?
play the
Like-
giant, and you will like it.
No, I see where you're coming
Swap
from
me
now.
up.
Yeah. Oh
Swap,
god.
We'll play your 0-mana 8/8.
God. All right. Before we hop over to the neutral cards, let's just recap a little bit on just Death Knight in general.
We also
do you
missed
wanna do-
Frostmourne.
Oh.
Sorry.
Frostmourne is a playable card now. We didn't talk about that.
No. Oh yeah, I totally missed this. We do have Frostmourne, the last non-ruined card. Classic weapon, basically from the Lich King pool. Does the same exact thing. It's a 5/3 weapon. Costs you 7 mana this time. Death Rattle summon every minion killed by this weapon. I don't want to spend 7 mana on it. I really don't.
Yeah. My question is, why couldn't they just leave anti-magic shell the way it was? Like it was perfect. Like why did they have to change that one? Why did they have to change any of them? I want Army of the Dead to summon a bunch of minions from my deck too. So like, how could you do this to me? It's too confusing for new players. How dare you? That's
Well,
all I'll say.
I'm a little bit sad that they did this, because like, what if they eventually rotate Lich King into core set to be there with the Death Knights, and then the Army of the Dead and the Anti-Magic Shell don't do the same thing? So,
Yeah.
you know,
It's very confusing.
I know they should just revert them both to what their Lich King versions do.
also I'm very surprised that they didn't just like print the Lich King as a core set card for Death Knight for what it's worth.
Well,
But
he's the hero
Well,
now,
he's-
right?
Yeah, he's
sure,
a-
but
he's a
he can't have a card
playable
too.
class. No, he can, but like, don't take him out of neutral.
Yeah, all right, that's fair.
True.
He's not seeing play anyways. But yeah, okay. Now that we've gotten through all of the Death Knight cards, we've gotten through. I don't want to do math, but it was like 90 plus cards for Death Knight. Taking a little bit of a step back. How are we feeling about it?
Oh, I was gonna say I thought you were gonna go right into the neutrals, and I was
No,
like,
we're taking a break
ooh.
before we go to the neutrals.
Yeah.
Take a step back.
Okay.
How are we feeling about Death Knight, kind of just in general when it comes to Wild? What are we looking at playing? What are some of the cards that excite you? Things like that.
It feels like it's going to be hard to be day one Demon Hunter with the cards that we've seen. But at the same time, I feel like we all underestimated Demon Hunter before that. So I say that, with the reservation that, like, yeah, I don't want to look silly, so I'm not going to say that. Go ahead and cut that out.
It's too late.
Please.
It's too late.
No. So, like, it doesn't seem as, like, obviously over-tuned in certain situations. But there's a lot of interesting things that like are certainly worth taking a look at. I think the Even Unholy is probably like the obvious starting point. I think that there's some maybe interesting looks at like Blood, whether it's Reno or otherwise, that if things are relatively slow, it could be worth looking at. I don't know. In general, I'm excited for the class. I'm excited for the challenge. I don't know if it'll necessarily be out of the gate as silly as a Demon Hunter was, but I've been very wrong before. So
Yeah, I haven't really done the full deck building thing. Like the only thing I looked at was even Death Knight. And that deck does look like it could be very oppressive in other like aggressive matchups. So that deck seems, the easiest to build, like from a wild player's perspective, because you just type in even and you put in literally every unholy card and you call it a day. So that could be good. But the more we're talking about, I can see something like Frost aggro. Like I can see sort of the undead and some of these cards that seemingly don't look that good, but when you start throwing in like pirate packages and things like that, there might actually be a shell, because some of these like neutral, not even neutral, but just like generic undead aggro cards, some of them are very efficient. Like or even just like that Defias Leper type card, right? Like that and this an aggro deck could be very good in by wild standards. So I kind of want to get back in the lab, get back to the deck building, and move beyond. Actually, look at some of the cards that cost 1, 3, and 5 mana, which is a concept I never thought was possible.
Yeah, I think the Frost aggro decks, the combination of blood runes, right? Whether you're going 2 blood, 1 unholy, or 2 blood, 1 frost, or 3 blood, as like your Reno shell. The aggro frost deck, and then obviously the unholy Death Knight seem like the obvious 3 ways to play Death Knight kind of out of the gates. That being said, there's a much larger player base out there than the 3 of us that are also containing a lot of smart people. So I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up with a competitive wild Death Knight deck. I'd be actually pretty surprised if we didn't out of the gates see a competitive deck.
I remember thinking Demon Hunter in Wild was going to be the worst any class has ever been in any format. And it was the exact opposite.
You were right. You were just 2 months too early.
Come on. You were ahead of your time.
Yeah, I'll take it. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. Here's to hoping that they don't just absolutely gut the class like they did Demon Hunter. I'm also very interested in seeing like what they do with when it comes to like the new core set and stuff, and how they like what are they going to rotate out and then print new stuff in and see, because they're immediately going to rotate out like 20, 30 cards in 4 months, right? And so maybe we'll see a lot more interesting synergistic things pop up in Death Knight that just like haven't really taken place yet for Demon Hunter, because we're just coming, I think, on like our first rotation for Demon Hunter. So
yeah, the interesting thing as well is that they've already decided all the Death Knight core cards. Like that's already locked in before even really seeing what's going to happen with the wider player base. So I'm sure like in testing, but it'll be interesting to see if there are any stark differences between what happened in testing and what actually ends up happening once everything goes live.
yeah, all right. So you guys in the comments, let us know how you guys are feeling about Death Knight as well. We've got 90 plus cards. Let us know what you're excited for, what cards stand out, what you guys are excited to play, things like that. So by the time of recording this episode, we have had all the neutrals revealed, but given that we just talked about like 90 cards, I think we'll save that for next week as we talk about a couple of other cards as well that are coming out. But I hope you guys are enjoying reveal season. Man, I'm excited for Death Knight. I'm glad we talked about it. I will say a little bit of a tinfoil hat. I think there's a reason they did all of the Death Knight cards up front, because they're having an event on November 16th or 17th. Like Blizzard sanctioned event, and there may have been some cryptic tweets on Twitter, and this won't be the last time or the first time or the last time that I've fallen for these teases on Twitter, that there may or may not be like an early release for Death Knight, which I think would actually be like super awesome. Again, I may be getting completely omega baited by tweets by Blizzard employees, and it wouldn't be the first or last time, but if that was true, I think that'd be super sweet.
I thought you were going to say you've been following the cryptic tweets where they talk about they were doing a DK show match. And I was like, yeah, they just said that. Like, they just said that outright. I was like, you know what? Doing Sherlock Holmes stuff over here.
I was confused by that too, because I haven't seen said cryptic tweet. So I'm just
no, I haven't.
He's just announcing it. Like they've already said they're doing this. They have the talent already announced. What are you talking about?
All right, maybe I just misunderstood said cryptic tweets, but I'll go find them. But yeah, regardless,
I think it's better to say, hey, we're getting Death Knights on December 6th, and that's very exciting. And we get to see them played on the 16th, and that's probably why. Because like the people that are competing in the show match have to know what the cards are before they can like actually build decks around Death Knight. So I think it's more just to give those people access to the information that they need in order to compete.
See, that would make sense. All right, like I said, I did preface all of this with tinfoil hat. All right, I protected myself. Right.
A lot of tinfoil.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Probably am. There will be a show match though. Later this week, so make sure you guys check that out if you guys want to see some of the Death Knight cards in action. Guys, thanks for sticking with me with a one of many 2-hour reviews, part 2 of probably like 5 or 6. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for reviewing all these Death Knight cards with me. Let the people know where they can find you guys in your content.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitch and YouTube at Roffle, and eventually you'll be seeing me play a lot of Death Knight content.
And Roffle will also be revealing a card, I believe, at some point.
That's true. That's true. The 21st, I have my first ever card reveal. So make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that when that goes up, you can see the card before anyone else and show all your friends. You'll be the talk of the town.
Yeah, if you're not checking out Roffle's channel, you can also come check out my Twitch at Corbett or Corbettgames on Twitter and YouTube.
Congrats again, Roffle. Congrats. Make sure you guys check out his card reveal. Make sure you support it, watch it, like it, subscribe to it, share it with everybody so that he gets another one, because that'd be awesome. But congrats again. Also check out Corb's content as well. Not to slight Corb as well, but make sure you check out his as well. It's also pretty good. You can find out my stuff on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube at GetMeOut. Appreciate everybody for hanging out. Hope you guys enjoyed the card review, and we will see you guys again next time. Later.